Hi guys, this would be the 5th video in my Lightroom tutorial series and my 2nd video in editing, where I teach you how to edit. Last video was a little bit basic, so I'm gonna take you a little bit beyond the basics now. And I'm not gonna do that by just, going between sliders and show you how them work in top-down manner. I'm gonna edit a photo and introduce those elements in as we go along in the edit. So here we are back in Lightroom, and this is a photo I edited some while ago. And well, let's just say since I edited this file, I've somewhat changed my edit. So it's nice sometimes to go back to your edits and edit it again. But you don't necessarily want to kill this edit. You want to keep that. But here's the thing, you do not have to copy a file, so it will take up double space on your hard drive if you're using Lightroom. You can just make a virtual copy, which means it just takes all the information from the main file, the photo, and then it just adds the data to each file. So you will not see those two copies on your hard drive. You will just see them in Lightroom. Let me explain. Here's the photo in hand. So I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to select create a virtual copy. So now we have two of those photos, 1 and 2, and the other one is just a virtual copy. So if I reset the copy, the virtual copy, the other one is still intact. So I have two versions of this now. So let's start. And like I said, I'm going to be doing some of the things we did in last video, because those are the basic. You cannot skip them, but then I'm going to add a little bit to it. But for the first thing I can see, there is a little bit of, you can see there's a green line. It's a very contrasty area here. So there's a green line here. Sometimes it's a magenta line. And this is chromatic aberration. And you need to get rid of that. It looks very ugly. And here, close to the bottom somewhere, we have something that is called lens correction. And first, we will have this checkbox, remove chromatic aberration. And if I click that, usually what happens, I just lose it. It's done. It's gone. I can see no evidences of that here. If you do this and it happens not to disappear, you will have to do it manually. So then you go here in manual, and you will need to figure out, you just move those ever so slightly, so here, I'm almost there. Something like that. Still a little bit left. So, it is a trial and error. So I'm just going to go with the checkbox. 99% of the times this works. Also, what we have here is something that is called enable profile corrections. Profile corrections is every lens basically has a profile. And especially if the lens is very wide, I'm shooting this with a 16 to 35. It sometimes distorts the edges a little bit on the corners, and by clicking that, you are correcting that. Look at the difference. Here's before, and here's after. So back to the photo. You can see it has problems. It's very bright. It's very dark. Let's start by trying to get some of the highlights. But look at that. Just a little bit movement of the highlight slider, and it makes the world of difference. So we have some of the highlights back. Let's get some of the shadows back. This is too dark. So let's lift that up a little bit. What I'm going for here is I want the photo to be flat. I want it to be evenly lit and flat. And then I start to do my look, if you say. So technical things first. Get rid of the chromatic aberration. Clear the lens distortion if you want to do that. Sometimes I actually don't. But and then get the highlights back and pull up the shadows. Just stuff you need to do to be able to start working with the file. So somewhere here, I lower the exposure a little bit. The highlight is basically all the way down. It's all the way down now, and it looks okay. And shadows. I'm not sure. I'm gonna leave it like this, and I'm gonna create a radial filter. So I click this circle here, the radiant filter, and I start to work with my problem areas. So here, raise the shadow a little bit too much. This is a dark area, so it shouldn't be too light. Like I said in the last video, you don't want to kill the contrast completely. So you want contrast. And how much contrast is a personal preference. For example, I do not like those, first when I learned photography, I was taught, if you look at the histogram here, that this is a good histogram. It's not clipping, but it reaches all the way from the left lower corner to almost to the right lower corner, which means it's spanning all the tonal range. Me personally, I don't like that. So what I do, I lift up the black point. So how do I do that? I go here in tone curve, and you can see this is just a line between corners now, and the most common thing here, you would see an S-curve to deal with the contrast. So now we have a much more contrasty images. I can click here to see the before and the after, and that darkens the shadows even more. So what do I mean by lifting the black point? This is the black point here in the lower left corner, and this is the white point in the upper right corner. So I lift the black point, and I'm saying, and look at the histogram changing. I'm lifting this black point, and the histogram is changing, and it grays out, it washes out the blacks. This is the look I like. A little washed out black, still contrasty, but a little washed out, not very black. And I very often lower the white point also. So I say you cannot be whiter than this point. So I'm never blowing out the highlights. So this is shortening the contrast band. So it will be flatter. The picture will be more flat, but I do like it. Like, you can add as much contrast to as you want. You can do the contrast ladder here. I talked about it in the last video. I never use this, almost never. I always adjust my contrast here in the curve because I have so much more control over the contrast here. The lower you go, the more darker areas you are dealing with. The upper you go, the more of the image you are. So here I'm just dealing with the darkest areas, but if I move it here, I'm doing more and more of the image. So find your sweet spot somewhere like here, like this. Okay, now we have something, but we will come back to this a little later. You go back and forward. There's not like you go from top to down. You go back and forward and you adjust. I would like to have a little bit of more saturation, but I want it very selective, so I'm not going to do this. This looks completely crappy. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to find the saturation here in the HSL Color palette. Here we have the saturation. We have the hue to change the color, we have the saturation, and we have luminance. So now I want saturation. I want a little bit more going on in the clouds. I could select the little point here, and then I go to the colors in the cloud, and I just do it with that by moving the mouse cursor up and down. And I guess this is doing an okay job now. So I do a little bit of that, then I'll just adjust it a little bit after the fact. Before and after. A little more contrasty, a little more saturation, sorry. Not much. I'm not going for a lot. I'm just going for subtle yet significant. So I find this area here is a little bit too much blue. There's too much blue here. So I might try to lower the saturation in the blue a little bit. And then I might go to luminance. And with luminance, I'm just changing the luminosity in each color. See, if I go, you know, all the way to the bottom, see the color banding that I start to see here. It looks awful. So we need to go back a little bit. So what is usually, if I move this one a little bit to here, then I would probably need to move this one also to soften the gradient, the division between the colors. So it's always like a little bit of a curve when you are adjusting these guys. So maybe a little bit lighter here. I'm gonna do a radial filter, just this entire area here, to lighten that up a little bit, like that. Maybe just lift this up a little bit, and I feel it's still a little too blue, but I don't want to adjust the saturation slider because that's a global thing. So I will just adjust the saturation here because this is selected, and everything within this gray box here I can adjust locally with these tools. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, like that. Like that. This is nicer. So here is before, like I say, it's very saturated and blue, and take the saturation a little bit out, and maybe I change the temperature, the color temperature a little bit, just in this area, in the circle. So look at that, it looks much nicer now. Something like that. Like I said, be careful with magenta and green. It falls apart really quickly, but you do need to edit those sometimes to get the right color. Something like that. Okay, I would like the sky to be a little darker. I don't know, let's see. Let's try it. Sometimes you just don't know. And then you just have to try it. It's as simple as that. So I'm gonna do it, try not to bleed over the other areas too much. You're always gonna have something. You could also use the brush, but in this case, I think I'm going for the radio filter. Something like that. That. So now we can see it's, if I compare this photo to the other photo I had before. That's that photo. You see the new photo. This one is a little bit more contrasty. I like it, but I think it's a little bit over the top. I would like to darken it a little bit, darken everything a little bit, get it more as a nighttime shoot. Then I get the nice glow effect here, and the clouds look nice. And let's see if we can increase the black contrast a little bit, the contrast in the shadow areas, but maybe reduce it a little bit in the highlights. I think that's more pleasing. Yeah, something like that. And you can see if I pull the black point down, it gets very contrasty. I really don't like that. I raise it maybe a little higher than before. This is something I like. I like this. Yeah. This is nice. I'm going to leave this photo like this. And remember, to make a virtual copy, you can make as many as you want. You right click on the photo, create a virtual copy. Then you have two of these. You can reset one. This is what we started with. And this is where we are. This is where we started. And this is where we are. So there are a few things I can do here where I can add a little clarity to it. A lot of people like to use a little clarity. I don't. I use clarity usually never on a global thing. I don't do it on a whole image. I use clarity, for example, if we see this photo here. This is really nice photo because it's basically ready. It's I don't need to do anything. I might want to do like chromatic aberration and the lens profile, the color profile, the profile correction. But it's evenly lit, it's flat, and it's nice. It's a really nice starting point for me to edit. So let's edit this real quick. First of all, you need to know what do you want? What do you want in this edit? Okay, what I want is I want the mountain to pop a little bit more. I want the beach to be a little darker, and I want more definition in the waves because I have a really nice movement here in the waves. It's a little bit too white, you know. It would not maybe be the photo I would pick for a portfolio, but having said that, it is a nice movement. And maybe I would like to have this blue a little bluer and these clouds maybe a little darker. So let's do that. First of all, let me add a little contrast to it. So there we go. And I want to raise my black point a little bit like I do, because that's my style. And this is something which is very optional. You don't have to do that. I'm just showing you how I do it. And so to get you could do like a gradient filter like this to get the darker clouds. But what this does, it also darkens the top of the mountain, and I don't like that. And that's also one of the reasons I would not necessarily use a gradient filter on my camera for this shot. I would rather bracket this shot because I don't want the mountains to be, mountain tops to be darker. I just want darker clouds. A little bit, not much. Maybe just on the left side a little bit. Maybe it can stay like it is on the right side, maybe just on the left side. So I would do a radiant filter like that. Thing is, with dark clouds, people tend to overdo it a lot because it kind of looks cool and if you go completely like this, it's just, I mean, I don't know. It kind of looks unrealistic if you know, in comparison with the rest of the photo. But it's still kind of cool. You know, I'm just a little bit less. Maybe get some contrast there also by increasing the whites also. Something like that. And if I press new here, I can make a little bit here also, just here in the corner, like this, but very subtle. I go back to 0, and then I dial down with my up and down arrow keys on my keyboard. And look at the black dot. Inside this circle, there's a black dot, which means I can have as many of these filters I want. But this black dot within this circle means that this filter, this radiant filter is active. If I press this one, then I'm controlling that one. I can change it somewhat, and I need to come back to this one. Then I can do that also a little bit like this. What I like about that, to take the top clouds here a little bit, and let it like gradient out. You can see it creates a little vignette, you know, with the clouds, like a natural vignette. So I kind of like that. But I also told you I wanted a lighter mountain. So I'm doing a gradient filter for that also. Like this. Just do something. And then I lift it, not too much. I don't want that to look washed out or anything like that. And just adjust it until you're happy. Something like that. Okay. So now I want more action in the water. Like if I just pop up the clarity a bit, you can see it looks much nicer, but the rest of the image falls apart. It looks over sharp and it just looks crappy. So what I would do here is I would make another radial filter for the ocean, like that, something like that. And here I have a little clarity already, something like that. And darken this a little bit. So I'm just trying to get a little more, not saturation, a little more definition in. You can also, you can sometimes try dehaze. Sometimes it looks nice, sometimes it just looks completely crappy. Let's have a little bit here, like that, something like that. Yeah, let's see. This is before, and this is after, so we're almost there. I wanted more blue in the sky, and I want more pop in the mountain. So I would go probably to luminance here in the HSL Color palette. So here, start with the blue. I'm just decreasing the luminance in the blue, like that. And it's very fashionable now to make the sky a little bit teal. Personally, I don't like that, but you do that. You go to hue, and you change the blue to a little more teal color. I see this a lot now. I'm not a fan. But having said that, maybe a little bit. Like that. Yeah. And now I feel like the ocean is a little bit overdone. You see? You go back and forward, and it just we take the dehaze out. Maybe that's what did it for me. It looks nice to know. Something like that. And also I wanted the mountain. So what colors do I have here in the mountain? I have some yellow, orange. Let's see if I change the luminosity for that. If I lift the luminosity for yellow and orange, the mountain pops a little bit more. Maybe a little green, like that. And yeah. So basically, this is what I'm talking about. I did what I needed. I wanted more. I wanted more definitions in the ocean. I wanted the beach a little bit darker. I wanted the mountain to pop more. I want a little darker sky and blue, darker clouds and bluer sky. So let's see the before and after. And I did that. Now, this is how you edit this is up to you, and it's up to your taste. But what I did was, before I started the edit, I decided on what to do, and then I did that. But once you are comfortable with all these basic edits, then it's time to think about stuff like color grading and stuff like that. I have a few examples I want to show you. These are not landscape photo, but it kind of shows you better what I mean. So this is a color graded photo I took of this girl in Vietnam, and it is, you can see it's a little bluish. And if you want to see the before, if I reset this is how it was when I shot it. And after the color grade, it was like this. This is the mood I wanted in this photo. And here, there's another photo. It's color graded. This is the mood I wanted. This is what I shot. And this is the mood. Okay, more black and white. Okay. This is what I shot. But I wanted a powerful, isolated image. This is the mood I wanted. Here maybe, fisherman's. This is what I shot. And this is the mood. This color grading business, this is not easy. I sometimes talk about the 80-20% rule. You can go from 0 to 80 in editing skills really fast. It's not that hard. Anybody can do that. But those but those 20% that is left, they are difficult. They can't be. These are many micro adjustments and all these sliders. You know, you see this, oh, that changes that, and you need to change that, and it is just a series of micro adjustments that takes your photo from good to amazing. And color grading, it sets the mood, it tells the story, it does a lot. But to get there, there's nothing I can tell you here. I can just show you how the slider works, and then it's different from image to image. But to get there, you need to do it. You need to edit, and you need to color grade again and again and again and again. That is the only way that you can go from good to great. So, but I'm going to show you a little bit, a few more tools in Lightroom that can help you do that. And first is a tool that not many people use, and it's a shame. It's a really, really nice tool, and that's called camera calibration. This option is buried way down at the bottom of the edit, so a lot of people just miss it. But let's see how it works. First of all, let's put this on. This is the RGB. These are the colors we are using in the computer. Red, green, and blue, and and how you mix these colors are the colors you're gonna get. So, in camera calibration, well, let's start with selective saturation here. Let's see how that works, because here we have red, and here we have red saturation, and if I move this slider here, I'm just affecting the red. So you can see that. If I deal with the blue, I'm just affecting the blue, and so on. Camera calibration does not work like this. This is just dealing with the red. So if I look at here, if I put my cursor over the red, I can see under the histogram that the RGB value of this red color, and it has some red in it, 75, it has some green in it, 34.5, and and some blue. So this color is made up of more than one color. So if I go to camera calibration, you can see here we have the red, green, and blue also. And if I adjust the saturation of those colors, it affects all the values, all red, green, and blue, because like I said, in this red, we have all three values. We have some values in red, but the green and blue are not at 0. So that's gonna be affected also, unlike the saturation slider in saturation. So let's see if I increase the saturation here of the red or decrease it. You can see it's affecting everything. And the green, it's affecting everything. So here we have the hue for the red, and you can see it's affecting everything. So sometimes when you have an image, let's go with this image for example, and let's just see how it works first. Look at how when I increase the red saturation here in the camera calibration, it affects the sky and the mountains nicely, very nicely. So let's see the green. Look at that. Very selectively of these colors, it adds. And the blue, it actually looks nicer after we start to color grade this image a little bit. So, but color grading is not one particular tool. Color grading is more than color. It's luminosity, it's saturation, it's all those things combined. So what if we change the hue a little bit? You know, the thing is, you just need to check it out, try it, see how it works, see how it affects your colors, and if it looks nice or not. Because in the end, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make it look nicer. And the more you start to play with these sliders, the more you start to understand how they work and how they affect each color in your image. So I you know, and this is never, I'm never using just this. For example, there's another box here called split toning, and this is something I use quite a lot, especially in video. So if you heard about, you know, teal and orange, these are very like cinematic colors. They call it cinematic colors. So that means basically you're putting teal in the shadows. So let's try that a little bit. Teal in the shadows and orange in the highlights. and then you can move the balance between them. Okay. What am I seeing here? I'm feeling like this looks a little bit too much magenta. So maybe I can take care of that in the white balance. Something here, but too much saturation, too much effect. Also here. You can also use the color picker to get your desired effect. And this is too much. Something like that. I'm kind of liking this. The only problem is the C. It has a weird color cast. I don't like it. So we had a radial filter here over this. Maybe we could do something more with that. For example, cutting down the saturation a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Look at that. It was here, with this weird magenta, yellowish, weird look. Doesn't look nice. Just take down the saturation here, and it actually looks nice again. Okay, and maybe change the white balance a little bit. Like this. So. This is not color grade. Like I said, there's nothing right or wrong with color grade. It's just what you like. And the only way to get good in this is by doing it again and again and again. So there's another thing here. Here is sharpening. If I want to sharpen this image, I can do that. If I zoom in a little bit, you can see how it is now, and if I increase the sharpen a little bit, I hope you can see it in the video. It sharpens quite a lot, but usually I don't like to have everything sharp. I don't like the skies to be sharp, and you know, just the outline. So if I increase the sharpen just a little bit too much, then I can always dial it back. I press Option Alt. And then I can mask in. So here white is revealed, black is not. So it's by default it's like this. Everything is sharpened. So if I draw, if I move the slider up, you can see where it's starting to get black, there will be no effect from the sharpen. And like I said, I don't want it in the sky. You know, maybe a little bit. I think it's going to be nice like this. A little more maybe. Like that somehow. Maybe dial it down a little bit. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, now I have nice sharpness in the outlines. But not everywhere, you know. This is something you need to try on your computer. It's probably not very visible in the video, but it is nice. One more. Let's color grade this. This is Northern Lights, and there are many versions. Some people like to see their greens and have their photos very yellowish. Personally, I used to like that. I don't like it anymore. I like to go more on the cold side, bluish, like this, up the magenta a little bit, something like that. And I'm going straight to luminance. See how that deals with the green, like that. Somehow we have a little magenta. I guess this is a magenta color here. And this is magenta, like this, something like that. I don't like all this blue in the background. I would like to be more black, so I decrease the saturation, not too much, but something like that. Look at the before and after. So, and I also want it to be somewhat darker, like that. Something like that is nice. More definition a little bit in the Northern Lights, so I would like to maybe add a little clarity to it, but I don't want clarity everywhere. I just wanted, let's use the brush for clarity, this brush here. Make everything 0 here with double clicking on the sliders, except clarity. Let's just put it a little high so we're seeing, so I can see what I'm doing. You can see it's adding a little clarity and a little more definition in the Northern Lights. Look at this, before and after, like that. I like that. This is cool. Also, I like to see my foreground a little bit better, so I would do a radiant filter there, like this, something like this, not clarity, just a little exposure, and also I like it to be somewhat more white, so let's drop down the saturation a little bit and change the white balance so it's not as affected by the Northern Lights. You know, you can always see the color cast from the lights, but I don't like it to be too much. So here we go, like this, something like this, and let's see. White balance for the glacier again. This is at the Glacier Lagoon in Iceland. Something like that. And then you can maybe deal with contrast a little bit. And if you want the washed out look in the blacks. So just a quick, add a little texture to it. There we go. Too much, like that. So let's look at the before and after. I think it looks much nicer. And you see, it took 2 minutes. It takes 2-3 minutes to do this. You know, obviously I would go a little further, but these are just tweaks and micro adjustments. You have all the tool now. Basically, you just need to do it, and you can experiment with these ones. Look at that, it makes the green pretty vivid if I do that. And the blue would probably do it too much, so let's reduce the blue a little bit like that. There we go. I find the green is a little bit oversaturated. Some people like that, but I'm not that guy, so let's take down the saturation a little bit for the green. And more definition would be nice. Sometimes if you crush the white a little bit, it gives more definitions in light. It also changes the exposure. So if I increase the whites like this, I would also want to decrease the exposure. Like that. Before and after. Look at that. Looks much nicer now. So much nicer. There is one more, I think it's only one more window here I need to talk to you about. We had this vignetting. You can do vignetting here. Just adding and where the midpoint is, the roundness and the feather and the highlights. Just it's a vignette. So yeah, and there was another one here, which is this one, transform. And I think I have like this church here. This is when you need your straight lines to be straight, and that's especially relevant in architecture. When you're shooting, and it's very common when you're shooting a house, you want all the house to be in your frame, so you tilt your camera upwards a little bit. What happens that your camera back is not straight anymore, it's tilted, so you will get like a little pyramid effect. You can use tilt shift lens to deal with that, or the cheaper way to do it is to shoot a little wider than you need. It's very important. Shoot a little wider than you need, because you can correct the lines, but it's gonna affect your real estate. So it's gonna crop your image a little bit. So you're manipulating the image, so you don't have as big. So you need to shoot wider, otherwise your subject might go out of frame. So let's see. Here we have this church. Here, this is not a high house, but you can see a little bit if I go over here, this slider here. If you follow one of the lines, let me make it bigger. If you follow the lines, the grid on the screen, you can see the church is not straight. So the easiest way, you can do it, of course, here with manual transform. So you can do this like that. Now it's straight. Sometimes it's a little bit more complex than that. Usually I just click vertical. Boom. And it's straight. Everything is straight now. If I look at it, every straight line now is straight. So that is that. So you can have a level, auto, sometimes auto, you know, because it's an artificial intelligence, I guess that's called that. If I press auto, it will usually just make these crooked lines straight. But I like to, artificial intelligence, it sounds so impressive, but I just like to have control. I like to know what the computer is doing. And constraint crop, if it crops inside the photo, like I said before, you need to have a little more real estate around the subject, because it distorts the image. So it could be like you see white areas in the shot. Like let me show you, if I can just show it to you, like this, like now. You can see stuff like that. If I press constraint crop, it's gonna crop until now. It looks kind of cool. It looks like a cartoonish church. So you can both use it to get correct, and for also you can use it for creative stuff like this, if you want. So that's enough for this video. In the third video, I'm gonna introduce you to some more features to edit with in Lightroom. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.